International. You are listening to our half-hour broadcast in English for listeners in Western Europe and North America, the East Coast. We can also be heard on the internet in WMA, MP3, and AAC Plus formats at www.rri.rai Channel 1. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Flickr, and Pinterest. We wish you good reception conditions. Welcome to this broadcast on Radio Romania International. Radio Newsreel.
Hello, I'm Cristina Matescu with the news bulletin. After the news, stay tuned for the Week in Review. First, the headlines. Speaking about the plane crash in Ukraine, Romania's President Băsescu said the killing of 298 innocent people in a terrorist act should not be without consequences. A special event held in Craiova in the south marked the end of the Romanian military mission in Afghanistan. And the Israeli offensive in Gaza continues. Speaking about the plane crash in Ukraine, Romania's President Băsescu said the killing of 298 innocent people in a terrorist act should not be without consequences. Also on Saturday, the government in Kiev accused the pro-Russian rebels in the east of the country, who control the area of the crash, of trying to destroy the traces of their crime. Earlier, Kiev said the members of a contact group made up of Ukraine, Russia, and the OSCE reached an agreement with the pro-Russian separatists to create a security zone 20 kilometers from the site of the crash. On Friday, the OSCE inspectors on the ground were denied full access to the area. Investigators from Malaysia, the Netherlands, and the US are expected in Ukraine to investigate the cause of the crash. The almost 300 victims include Dutch, Australian, Indonesian, British, German, French, Belgian, and Philippine nationals, as well as a Romanian with dual citizenship. US President Barack Obama said on Friday there is evidence the plane was downed by a surface-to-air missile fired from the area controlled by the Moscow-backed separatists. The authorities in Kiev and the pro-Russian rebels immediately blamed each other for firing the missile. Romania has demonstrated that it has taken its NATO membership very seriously, remaining committed to the end to the most important military mission carried out by the alliance since its creation, namely the ISAF mission in Afghanistan. This statement was made by the Defense Minister Mircea Dușa in the southern city of Craiova at an event marking the end of the Romanian Army mission in Afghanistan. Dușa awarded the Badge of Honor to the members of the 30 units who achieved notable results during their mission. Romania started deploying military to the theaters of operation in Afghanistan in June 2002, when the Red Scorpions Battalion from Craiova was sent to the southern province of Zabul. In the last 12 years, Romania has contributed 25,000 troops to NATO operations in Afghanistan and has lost 26 soldiers. The pullout of the Romanian troops started in June 2014, and from October, only 200 military will stay on in Afghanistan to help train the Afghan army. The Israeli offensive in Gaza against the Palestinian movement Hamas continued on Saturday. US President Barack Obama emphasized that Washington supports Israel's right to defend itself, but that he was worried about the escalation of violence in the region. After days of airstrikes, Israel on Thursday launched a ground offensive in Gaza. The operation is aimed at destroying the tunnels created by terrorists to infiltrate from Gaza into Israel and comes in response to Hamas's refusal to accept the peace plan proposed by Egypt. Hamas threatened the Israeli state with serious consequences. Almost 300 Palestinians have been killed and 2,000 wounded since the start of Israel's operation in Gaza on the 8th of July. In Romania has been applied financial corrections worth 285 million euros in 2013, more than in 2012, due to irregularities in the absorption of European funds. The European Commission said on Friday in its annual report on the protection of EU's financial interests and the fight against fraud. The highest portion of these corrections, amounting to 219 million euros, refers to the European Social Fund, which finances, among others, the operational program Human Resources Development and the operational program Administrative Capacity Development. Other corrections were applied to projects financed through the European Agricultural Guarantee Fund, the Cohesion Fund, and the Rural Development Fund. According to the government's convergence program, Romania absorbed over 5.5 billion euros last year. And that's the news.
Next on Radio Romania International. Hello, we are Vlad Palcu and Daniel Bill to the microphone. The European People's Party candidate Jean-Claude Juncker was on Tuesday elected as the new president of the European Commission. Juncker was sworn in Strasbourg after presenting his political program before the European Parliament. The main priorities of his term in office include economic growth and making more jobs available, strengthening the economic and monetary union and the single market, revitalizing the industrial sector, continuing negotiations with the United States on the transatlantic partnership, creating a EU policy on migration, and paying special heed to the EU's external relations. The next step on Juncker's agenda is to decide on the new team of commissioners. The leaders of the European Union on Wednesday evening failed to appoint new commissioners in key fields, so a new meeting was set for the end of August. Romania wants to hang on to its agriculture portfolio in the new commission and preferably keep Commissioner Dacian Cioloș in his current position. EU leaders meeting in Brussels decided to put on hold all financial operations carried out by the European Investment Bank and the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development in Russia. Accused of fueling the armed conflict in eastern Ukraine, Moscow has been urged to use its influence with the pro-Russian separatist groups to put an end to the movement of arms and militants across the border. To Russia's overt discontent, the US has also announced the toughest sanctions on Russia yet, because, as President Barack Obama said, Russia has failed to take any of the steps the Obama administration has called for to de-escalate the situation in Ukraine. Sanctions are targeting two important banks in Russia, including that of the natural gas giant Gazprom, as well as two other energy companies whose access to the US capital market has been restricted. Other sanctions will be imposed on several firearms manufacturers, including the company manufacturing the famous AK-47 known as Kalashnikov. The situation in eastern Ukraine became even more strained on Thursday when a Malaysia Airlines jet crashed on Ukrainian territory. All the 298 people on board were killed. The aircraft, which was flying from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur, crashed in the Donetsk region, which is controlled by the pro-Russian separatists and lies only a few tens of kilometers from the border with Russia. Romania's President Traian Băsescu has called for an immediate investigation into the cause of the accident and for European Union experts to take part in the inquiries alongside the Ukrainian authorities. Also, the Romanian Foreign Ministry has created a crisis cell, which is also to monitor the Gaza Strip conflict between the Israeli army and local Islamist groups. After the evacuation early last week of 84 Romanian nationals and their families living in the region, two mobile consular groups were again deployed on the ground in Amman and Tel Aviv to provide consular assistance to the Romanians who are still in the area. A proposed 5% cut in social security contributions paid by employers is beneficial to the business environment unless it attracts new taxes and duty rises, said the president of the Foreign Investors Council, Steven van Groningen, after talks with President Traian Băsescu. On Monday, the president also held consultations with Prime Minister Victor Ponta, having earlier said he would oppose the cut in social security contributions unless the government explained how it would cover the reduction and what steps it was considering to prevent upsetting the budget balance. In Prime Minister's opinion, the measure would lead to an increase in taxes or the reduction of investments. Prime Minister Victor Ponta argues, however, that this is the best time to take this measure owing to the country's economic growth and higher budget returns. Talks ended in Bucharest this week between the country's biggest centre-right parties, the National Liberal Party and the Liberal Democratic Party, as their leaders agreed on the final details of a merger. The aim is to create a bigger party called the National Liberal Party, able to compete against the Social Democratic Party, the winner of the European Parliament elections in May. The short-term goal of the new structure is to win the presidential elections in November, and its candidate will be announced at the beginning of August. In another development, the Permanent Council of the Democratic Union of Ethnic Hungarians in Romania, a junior partner in the government, has nominated the party leader Kelemen Hunor as presidential candidate. You have been listening to the Week in Review. You are listening to Radio Romania International. Next on Radio Romania International. World of Culture. Welcome to World of Culture with us, Mihaela Ignatescu and Eugen Nasta. Casa Radio Record House has released an exceptional double CD entitled Maria Tănase Traditional Songs 1953-1961, devoted to Maria Tănase birthday centennial. This is the first album which brings together most of Maria Tănase's radio recordings with a high-quality sound copied from original magnetic tapes without any audio effects, which usually reduce the authenticity of the performance. Each title is accompanied by detailed information about the recording, including the date, the accompanying orchestra, and the conductor, as well as the origin or story of the song. The disc includes 40 historical recordings from Radio Romania's archives. Maria didn't find it easy to make recordings at first. She couldn't harmonize with the orchestra and keep the bass. She was unable to sing a song again and in the same way. It took Maria, ethnomusicologist Harry Brauner, and other musicians a whole night to record Gypsy Wedding, but the sales of the disc covered the 80,000 lei loss. In fact, there are voices saying that Maria Tănase and the accompanying musicians saved the record house from bankruptcy. They also say that the only musicians left unpaid were Maria Tănase and Brauner. Actually, people say many things about Maria Tănase. Ioana Pelehatai writes in an article devoted to Maria Tănase, carried by the Dilemma magazine. Ioana Pelehatai also writes, quote, Maria's legend seems to have been born naturally. Actually, it was born out of sleepless nights, full of songs, incredibly long tours and trips all over the country. One night, at the turn of the year, Maria played in 14 different restaurants in Bucharest, and she ended the party in no other place but Capșa. Furthermore, she even called on the guests to dress properly, asking men to put on their ties and coats.
In the 1930s and 1940s, she went on tours to Turkey, performing at the Taksim Theatre in Istanbul and in Ankara. She learned songs in Turkish and returned from Turkey with the promise of receiving a job of researcher at the Ethnographic Institute in Istanbul, a villa on the Principal Island, of getting a show aired on Radio Ankara, and of receiving the status of honorary citizen. She refused them all. She performed before the French, German, and British ambassadors in Bucharest, singing to each of them in his native language.
The launch of the CD Maria Tănase Traditional Songs 1953-1961 was a good opportunity for a special music performance and a discussion about Tănase. The event was attended, among others, by artist and journalist Maria Balabaș, anthropologist Vintila Mihailescu, and ethnomusicologist Florin Iordan, a founding member of the Romanian old music band Trei Parale. Maria Balabaș also wrote the introductory text for a brochure entitled Traditional Songs.
Reprezintă în această seară Radio România pentru un eveniment care îmi aduce foarte mult.
I represent Radio Romania in this event, which brings a lot of joy to me, namely the launch of this double CD with Maria Tănase's music. A second issue was launched because the first 1,000 discs have been sold in no time. The album is the result of a whole team's work. To me, it was a period when I read a lot about Maria Tănase. I came closer to her spirit once more. Rereading what I wrote 6 months ago, I realized it was time we spoke about Maria Tănase again. So this event organized at the Cărturești bookshop can only make me happy. It should be only an introduction before listening to the fresh performance of Maria Tănase. Meanwhile, since the launch of the CD on the market, the Dilemma magazine has initiated a series of articles which bring together very interesting pieces on Maria Tănase. So this talk is only the beginning of what Maria Tănase achieved and represented.
On February the 20th, 1938, Maria Tănase's voice was heard for the first time live on Radio Romania in a traditional music program entitled The Village Hour. It was a success. Anthropologist Vintila Mihailescu has further details on Maria Tănase's music.
Maria Tănase a fost prima mare cântăreață de muzică populară românească.
Maria Tănase was the first great traditional music vocalist. I believe there is nothing closer to high professional standards than her songs are. I would like to underline that she was a performer of traditional and not poporanist music. Poporanist is related to poporanism, derived from popor, meaning people. Poporanism focused mainly on expanding the power of the peasants. In a very nationalist manner, Poporanism was also a champion of the Romanian language and maintaining the Romanian spirit. A distinction between the two words popular, traditional, and poporan, poporanist, was first made by researcher Bogdan Petricei cu HD. It also was very much used by Aristotle, who tried to better define and explain it. In a nutshell, it marks the difference between peasant, authentic culture produced by peasants and traditional culture, music included, which exceeds the boundaries of the peasant universe and is taken over and processed to be later turned into a mass phenomenon. So what Maria Tănase performs is a traditional and not poporanist music, although ethnologist Harry Browner compiled a repertoire of poporanist music for her. But this is the reason why we all love her, because she sings traditional music. The second important mention that should be made is that Maria Tănase sings Romanian traditional music. Against this backdrop, it is worth mentioning that poporanist music is mostly local and not 100% Romanian. So she sings national music, which means that she is part of a national discourse. We shouldn't forget that she was born into a family of peasants who lived, however, on the outskirts of a town. Her public was urban and rather cosmopolitan. She sang for those people who had local nostalgias, but who no longer belonged to the place they had come from. So she had to sing something to the liking of them all, of all the people who had left their native villages. Actually, she put it very clearly. She didn't take over, but processed and adapted songs.
Here is now ethnomusicologist Florin Iordan.
a actualizat muzica în sensul că a transpus în noul context în care ea o cânta, care era al...
Maria Tănase updated music. She transposed it into a new urban context where her music was very much appreciated by intellectuals. She did this naturally, with good taste and artistic sensibility.
You have been listening to World of Culture. You are tuned to Bucharest, Radio Romania International.
The Cooking Show.
Hello, this is Elena Inaki at the microphone. The Danube Delta is an ideal destination in summertime and a fantastic place if you like fish. The locals here have a variety of fish dishes which are very easy to cook. Take, for instance, the recipe for traditional fish salad soup. First, you need to gut, scale, and wash the fish. Ideally, you can use carp, but also perch and bass. Leave the fish whole and boil in a pot for an hour. Add the finely chopped onion and red pepper, the diced tomatoes, and the rice. Leave to boil over low heat while constantly spooning off the excess foam. Since this is a sour soup, you can use your choice of souring agent. The most popular in Romania is fermented wheat bran, but you can also do as the inhabitants of the Delta do and use vinegar or lemon juice. It shouldn't take more than an hour to make this delicious soup, since overcooked fish meat falls apart into the broth. Serve with freshly cut parsley sprinkled on top. Alternatively, you can cook the traditional fish brine, which you can cook with carp or perch. This simple dish is made by soaking the grilled fish in a sauce made by boiling vegetables in brine. Set a few tomatoes on the grill, cook them as much as you like, then chop them up. Mix them with a few cloves of garlic chopped finely, seasoned with dried thyme, basil, and a couple of green chilies. Top this mixture with hot brine, then throw in the grilled fish. Serve hot with polenta and a dry white wine. Enjoy.
This is Bucharest, Radio Romania International. Roots.
Welcome to Roots. I'm Mihaela Ignatescu with Daniel Bild. Objects have never been created with a purely artistic purpose, according to tradition. Their functionality was very specific, with the objects becoming beautiful items only after the peasant craftsmen had mastered techniques and carved decorative patterns with a very profound symbolism. Wood carving is one of the oldest crafts of the people inhabiting today's territory of Romania. Nowadays, only those who are truly fascinated with the expressive dimension of wood keep tradition alive. One of those who are passionate about traditional wood carving is ethnologist and traditional craftsman Vasile Moldovanu from Moren, Dâmbovița County, southern Romania.
Materia primă cu care lucrez este lemn.
The raw material I work with is wood. Wood is born from a seed. It grows, it develops and helps us. Since if it weren't for the wood we have, we would breathe a lot heavier, or we would simply choke off. I am happy I was born in the right place. Moren lies in a wonderful forest basin, steeped into hundreds of hectares of deciduous tree forests. I have all kinds of wood essence at my fingertips, such as linden, the poplar, or the alder tree. The willow is the wood essence blessed by the Holy Virgin Mary. It is the only wood essence I use when I make a hand cross or a hearth icon. Beech or oak tree wood is used in constructions, in traditional architecture, and for household items, from furniture to the wooden spoon, which is a must even for today's state-of-the-art kitchens.
Vasile Moldovanu is attached to each object he creates with selflessness and respect for nature. Vasile Moldovanu can carve any wooden item that is part of the traditional Romanian household, since he studied traditional culture in detail.
Eu fac absolut toate obiectele, de la lingură până la...
I make every object, from the wooden spoon to the queen of our traditional culture, the distaff. The most cherished of them is the earth icon, a Christian worship object, typically Romanian. In southern Romania, I found the oldest models which were preserved in the Romanian Peasant Museum in Bucharest, but also in the traditional museum in Târgu Jiu. After being cut down, wood takes time to dry, so that it can be processed. From one commissioned work to another, I applied different notching, scrolling techniques.
That was craftsman Vasile Moldoveanu ending today's Roots.
And with that, our broadcast in English for listeners in Western Europe and North America, the East Coast, has come to an end. You can listen to our next program for Western Europe at 22 hours UTC on 7430 and 9765 kilohertz, and for North America, the East Coast, at 0 hours UTC on 9700 and 11955 kilohertz. We can also be heard on the internet in WMA, MP3, and AAC Plus formats at www.rri.ro channel 1. If you have any comments or suggestions, please write an email at engl@rri.ro. Goodbye.